The Quest for Glory series is one of my favorite video game series of all time, and that's no small boast for the owner of a Let's Play channel with hundreds of Let's Plays under his belt over the last near decade. Combining elements of adventure gaming, role-playing games, memorable characters, a wonderful sense of humor, and compelling storytelling, the Quest for Glory series took some of the best bits of other Sierra games and added its own unique identity. Sadly, the Quest for Glory series only lasted for 5 entries, making it one of the shortest series from Sierra, but what it lacked in quantity, it more than made up for in quality. In this video, I'll be ranking the original 5 Quest for Glory games from worst to best, but strictly speaking, there's not a bad game in the bunch. Note for this list, I will only be including one version of each game, so no doubles of both the EGA as well as the VGA remake in the case of one. I will also not be including third-party updates like the one done for Trial by Fire, and lastly, I'll be excluding the more recent and very impressive Hero U Road to Redemption game developed by the Coles, which exists in the same universe as the Quest for Glory games. So now that I've established a few ground rules, I'm Tony with Let's Play with Brigands, and let's get to ranking the Quest for Glory series. Number 5. Quest for Glory 3, Wages of War. Oh, controversy right off the bat. Let me begin this entry by saying that I love Quest for Glory 3. It was even my favorite at one point as a kid. But now, years later, and with a bit more perspective on it, I'm comfortable putting Quest for Glory 3 in the bottom slot, and I'll explain why in just a moment. I recently learned that the Quest for Glory series was always meant to be a quadrilogy, or 4 games each set in their own unique environment and each drawing on one element, both of the 4 cardinal directions as well as the 4 seasons. Each one was meant to represent a different period in the hero's life and development. After Quest for Glory 2 finished, however, the developers decided an additional game with a new and yet-to-be-planned concept was necessary to more organically connect the second and what was originally planned to be the third games. The result was Quest for Glory 3, Wages of War. Taking place in the African-inspired jungle and savanna land called East Fracana, the hero travels with his paladin Liontar friend Rakeesh to prevent an imminent war and continue his own development as a hero. I love the world of East Fracana, which they created for Quest for Glory 3. The sunny plains and lush jungles are a nice change of pace after the barren deserts of Shapir or the snowy land of Spielberg. The developers did a great job establishing the 3 major groups of people in East Fracana, and the Liontars, the Simbani tribe, and the Leopard Men. Each group has their own well-developed cultures and motivations, which all make the time the hero arrives all the more complicated. There are a few things to pick at. Getting around proved to be a pain as they introduced a slightly more open world in the form of 4 huge screens which made up the overworld, in which the player traversed between on a bird's-eye, zoomed-out view to get to the more structured areas of towns and other points of interest. And because the story is rather linear, this often meant covering a great deal of distance to get to the item you needed, then immediately backtracking to where you just were, item in hand, to advance the game. Random encounters were a bit more annoying as a result as well, because it broke from the zoomed out view to some random point in the savannah or jungle where you could fight or run from a monster before dropping you back in the overworld. Additionally, it just didn't feel like there was as much substance to this game. Each character type had comparatively very little to do in terms of unique quests when set against the other games. Now, if it sounds like I'm nitpicking, it's because I clearly am, because, as I said, this remains one of my favorite games of all time. But again, with more perspective years later, I'd argue that Quest for Glory 3 is narrowly the weakest, as it simply doesn't feel as fleshed out as the rest of the series. And now that I know this particular game was basically developed as a bridge, I can sort of see why I feel that way. Number 4. Quest for Glory 5, Dragonfire. Okay, Quest for Glory fans, pick your jaws back up off the floor and take a breath of relief at seeing that Quest for Glory 5 didn't get any higher than the top 80%. For those not familiar with this game or even this series, Quest for Glory 5 doesn't get a lot of love. I'd even wager to say that most other lists would put this one at the bottom. That said, I absolutely love this game, so let's talk a bit about it. What likely alienated most players was that the developers completely overhauled the user interface which fans had grown accustomed to over the course of nearly the entire series, newly placing less of an emphasis on adventure gaming this go-around and a bit more on action. The battle system shifted from the classic one-on-one structured style to a completely open interface. The result was at times a bit awkward and required the player to take more care in lining up with their opponent when attacking. The standard interaction options of walk, look, take, and talk were replaced with a simpler catch-all interact with command. Graphically, the game was also completely overhauled, as this was the first game in the series to adopt 3D rendered environments and characters. I maintain that the game had a wonderfully unique graphical quality to it, which had a great deal of built-in charm. The story of Dragonfire is arguably the high watermark of the series in terms of drama and compelling narrative. Much of this stems from the fact that this was always meant to be the final entry in the series, so everything comes to a head in this one and virtually every loose end is resolved. The general plot is that longtime friend of the hero, the eccentric and kind wizard Erasmus, summons him to the Greek Isles-inspired land of Silmaria. The greatest threat to Silmaria? An ancient dragon who has been put under a spell and trapped away is beginning to awaken and threatens to destroy the entire land. To make matters worse, the king of Silmaria has been murdered, with the assassin still at large. The remaining government of the kingdom opens a classic set of rites of rulership, which willing applicants must complete in order to earn the title of king. The colorful cast of entrants to the rites are sent on a variety of quests, but the assassin continues to cut them down one by one to further drive chaos and fear throughout the land. As with other Quest for Glory games, there are plenty of side quests, diversions, and familiar characters to interact with outside of the main quest. As this was the last game in the series by design, the developers made it a point to include multiple nods and Easter eggs to the entire series overall for fans of the games. This meant appearances by several characters who had appeared throughout the series, both in recurring and one-off roles. Dragonfire also offers more choices than any other previous entries in terms of endings. Depending on how you played the game, at the end you can either choose to become king or not, choose from a handful of familiar ladies to court and eventually propose to, and even become chief thief of Silmaria. The latter was especially amusing to me if you chose to double as the king and chief thief. It's the little things. As badass as the Necrotar battle music from Quest for Glory 4 was, the soundtrack of Dragonfire is also arguably the best of the entire series. Chance Thomas's Mediterranean-inspired, nylon-string guitar-leaning musical score is at times inspirational, at times breathtaking, at times epic, and always perfectly suited for the scene at hand. Inspiring, breathtaking, and epic are also perfect as descriptors for Dragonfire in general, as I can think of. It really is one of my favorite games of all time, and for good reason. Please check out my Let's Play of it and every other game on this list if you are not familiar with it. Links in the description. Number 3. Quest for Glory 1. So You Want to Be a Hero. The first Quest for Glory instantly established just why this series is my favorite from Sierra and one of my favorites of all time. From the start, it felt like Quest for Glory took the best elements of every other series from Sierra while introducing a few others which made it all its own. It had the adventure elements synonymous with virtually every other game from Sierra. In the case of the VGA remake, it had the same point-and-click sense interface, fantastic and compelling storytelling, beautifully illustrated characters and backgrounds, hundreds of Easter eggs and well-used references to classic film and television, and the humor of the Space Quest and Leisure Suit Larry series, albeit a bit more mature on balance. The title alone clued you into the latter point, and the wonderfully quirky sense of humor you'd be in store for throughout the entire game. It was also the only major series to feature real role-playing elements, such as unique character creation, stat development, and near turn-based combat. One particularly awesome feature of this series also was the ability to perform a character save at the end of one game and import that character and all of their stats into subsequent games. This made the Quest for Glory series feel a bit more personal, as this really was your character, which you had designed and labored over developing throughout the course of the game and later in the series. Quest for Glory, So You Want to Be a Hero, establishes the premise of the series immediately. You're a recent graduate of the famous Adventurers Correspondence School for Heroes, literally a school designed to train folks in the hero profession to send out into the world and perform heroic deeds and make a name for themselves through helping others. The hero begins his journey in the Germanic-inspired land of Spielberg. There, they learn of the many troubles besieging the land, including the ruler of the land, the Baron's children having gone missing, a band of violent thieves who have been terrorizing the area known as the Brigands, and yes, that is where the namesake of my band, and subsequently this channel, came from, and a dangerous magical ogress named Baba Yaga who has cursed the land. This is an example of a series which really hit the ground running, as the first Quest for Glory feels the tightest overall, as it's understandably the shortest and smallest in scope. The novelty of developing your character's strength, magic, and other stats was completely new in this game, so many players made an extra effort to do everything they could to upgrade their hero to face the game's increasingly difficult challenges. If your stats weren't of a high enough level, then you couldn't achieve certain goals until you worked on them further. That said, you could blaze through most of this game by doing the bare minimum if you had your wits about you and occasionally dipped into one of the other character's type skill sets. Speaking of which, each character had their own uniquely designed way of handling most of the game's equally unique challenges. Thieves were designed to sneak around to avoid danger, whereas the fighter type was designed to face it head on. Finally, the magic user had a full complement of spells to do everything from opening locked doors to levitating to reach otherwise out-of-reach areas. The paladin, which was a tweak on the already vanilla fighter type, wouldn't be introduced until subsequent entries. Quest for Glory was also the only series with an active game clock, with certain events only occurring at certain times of the day or night. In fact, one of my very first memories was playing the original Quest for Glory with my brother and thinking there was something wrong with the game or the family computer when the screen started getting dark when night descended for the very first time in-game. The game clock also gave this game a real-time feel to it. Certain events of the game wouldn't trigger until certain days and after previous puzzles were completed. The great storytelling, gameplay, audio and visuals, role-playing elements, and wonderful sense of humor were all ingredients which make this series arguably my favorite of all time, and So You Want to Be a Hero perfectly displayed all of it. Number 2. Quest for Glory 2, Trial by Fire. This is where the hate mail really starts to kick off, because I acknowledge that if you ask most Quest for Glory fans what their favorite game in the series is, they'll respond with an emphatic Quest for Glory 2. It's not by accident, as Quest for Glory 2 Trial by Fire is an all-around fantastic game. Outside of Quest for Glory 5, Trial by Fire feels almost deceptively so like the largest, most open game in the series. The city of Shapeir is made up of nearly 100 backstreets, leading to squares, shops, and plenty of hidden secrets. There are seemingly almost just as many things to do, people to talk to, and quests to pursue in this game. As a kid, Quest for Glory 2 felt massive. My brother and I would spend many hours and nights grinding away at our character, getting their stats up through repeated sparring with Uhura or rumbles in the desert. This was until we learned about the wonders of sucking blue frogs. But that's another story, and the source of a lot of folks' ire during my original Quest for Glory 2 Let's Play. Plus, the city of Shapeir only makes up a little more than half of the game overall before you transition to the bizarro slum version in Razir. Perhaps the best way of putting it is if you experience this game in full the way it's meant to be experienced, it feels like a long but very entertaining ordeal. Depending on your character type, there are several big events custom made for you. While the fighter is arguably the driest, you get to pursue the secrecy of the elusive Eternal Order of Fighters. The magic user gets to rap more with Keep On Laughin' and Aziza, and even go through the rigors of joining the Wizards Institute of Technology. And my personal favorite character type, the Thief, shout out to Thiefy McSteels by the way, gets to work for the Thief Guild and go out on a handful of thieving missions which carries over to Razir, including a job to recover the infamous Black Bird. The Thief can even dabble in joining Wit as well. While this is the one mandatory typing interface game in the series, considering Quest for Glory 1 did get its official VGA remake years later, it never feels draining like it does in many other games. There's a reason why this game is frequently cited by many as being the best Quest for Glory game ever made, and thankfully, it even got some love from AGD in the form of a VGA remake. Incidentally, check out my newest Let's Play of that very remake, airing on this channel right now. I promise no blue frogs will be sucked this go around. Yeah, if you know what I mean. You probably don't, let's just move on. We finally end on my pick for the best game from arguably my favorite series of all time, with one of my favorite games of all time in Quest for Glory 4: Shadows of Darkness. The Eastern European world of Mordavia, with its Gothic castles, gypsies, Slavic folklore, and general dark Transylvanian vibes, feels as realized as anything any game has ever managed. Immediately following the events of Quest for Glory 3, the hero is inexplicably teleported to a dark cave and awakens alone just outside the Slavic-inspired town of Mordavia. Upon escape, the hero meets a mysterious young woman named Katrina, who continually assists and woos him throughout his adventures there as the two become closer. Throughout the course of the game, the hero uses his unique skills to help the initially wary townspeople and other locals, and eventually go up against his longtime foe in Ad Avis, who is now the undead servant of his dark master, a vampire sorceress. The hero is coerced into gathering dark rituals spread across the land and eventually completing them to summon Avuzal, the Dark One, into existence, before battling it to save Mordavia and beyond. The ending features some simultaneously beautiful and heartbreaking character development, as well as one of the happier and more satisfying resolutions from the series. Outside of a change in the classic battle setup, from a sort of behind-the-shoulder diagonal look to a horizontal, typical fighting game style, this game plays very much like Quest for Glory 3 or the VGA remake of 1. The score fits the mood of the game well, and there are a few standout tracks such as the aforementioned epic rocker that is the Necrotar. Think Zombie Wolf, battle music. Quest for Glory 4 is notable for being the first one in the series to feature a complete cast of voice actors, and they did not skimp on the talent, as it's arguably the best cast to voice a Sierra game to date. Narrated to absolute perfection by longtime film and voice actor Jonathan Rhys-Davies, and featuring the talent of notable voice acting names like Jennifer Hale, Jim Cummings, and Goofy himself, Bill Farmer, these voices bring the already colorful characters of Mordavia to life. Rhys-Davies is the real star of this game, as his narration perfectly delivers the tone of every moment of the game, whether it's nailing the pitch-perfect sarcasm and humor of a line, or making you feel the overwhelming dread, sorrow, or joy of a scene. The quests in this game are also on balance some of the most satisfying and interesting for the entire series. Whether you're reuniting an old man with his now dead ghost wife, proving the innocence of a gypsy to the bigoted townspeople and consequently saving his life, bringing peace to a gorgeous and naked Brazilka who only wants to drown you, or saving an undead little girl and subsequently reuniting her with her parents, the quests are memorable and at times downright moving. This point in the series is meant to represent the hero's flourishing maturity, the literal autumn or penultimate chapter of his life. Armed with a full set of skills and spells, there are plenty of ways to approach each quest and challenge. The setting makes this the darkest entry in the series, and these themes were executed and balanced perfectly with the sarcastic and clever wit and sense of humor the series is associated with. The developers definitely pulling the player back and forth between the two to hit all of the emotional cues. Quest for Glory 4 is a masterclass in not only adventure gaming, but in storytelling as well, and remains one of my favorite games of all time for good reason. So there you have it, my ranking of the Quest for Glory series. Feel free to tell me exactly how wrong I am in the comments section below, and please check out my Let's Plays of the entire series using the link in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to Let's Play with Brigands for more Let's Plays, live streams, best of lists, and of course, fun times.